You know, we've all heard of yin and yang, right? That classic symbol of cosmic balance. But what happens when that balance gets thrown off? Specifically, what happens when you have what's called a yin deficiency? Now, you might think you know the answer, but what if I told you the story behind it is one of the biggest U-turns in medical history?
So do any of these sound familiar to you? You know, night sweats that wake you up, feeling constantly thirsty no matter how much water you drink, those sudden waves of heat, or just that deep, nagging feeling of being completely burned out. And look, we've all been there, right? We just chalk it up to stress or a busy life.
But in the world of traditional Chinese medicine, these aren't just random symptoms. They're classic signs of a very specific imbalance. So, take a guess. What do you think is the root cause here?
Well, if you ask any practitioner today, the answer is pretty clear-cut. Yin deficiency means you're low on the body's cooling, moistening fluids. Think of it like coolant in a car. If you don't have enough, the engine overheats. Same idea here. Not enough coolant leads to all those symptoms of internal heat and dryness. Makes sense, right? It's a really clean, elegant idea.
Except, that's not what it originally meant. Not even close. The idea we take for granted today is actually a total rewrite. For most of its history, yin deficiency was a concept that we would find completely unrecognizable.
All right, so let's jump in our time machine. We're going way back to before the 1300s to see what this idea used to be all about.
This really lays out the massive shift in thinking. See, the old idea had nothing to do with lacking a substance, like fluids. It was all about location. Yin just meant inside the body, like your abdomen, and yang meant outside. So a yin deficiency was a geographical problem, something wrong deep inside you, not a resource problem, like running out of gas.
And to be honest, it wasn't a big deal back then. It was this kind of messy, confusing idea that most doctors just ignored. It was all over the place, not very useful. So what could possibly change that? Well, a crisis. You know, big changes don't just happen for no reason. There's always a trigger. And for this one, the trigger was a huge medical crisis that was sweeping through 12th and 13th century China, a widespread, often deadly problem of internal dryness. Okay, so back then, doctors were basically following these official government playbooks for medicine. But here's the problem. These super popular formulas were just packed with ingredients that were incredibly hot and drying. And to make matters worse, the whole idea that dryness could even cause disease was totally off the radar. So you had doctors treating patients with medicines that were literally throwing gasoline on an internal fire. Now, this dangerous trend probably would have just kept going if it weren't for one man who saw the devastation up close and decided he had to do something about it.
And this is our guy. His name was Zhu Danxi. He was a physician living right in the middle of all this, and he was about to challenge the entire system. But his reasons for shaking things up, well, they weren't just academic. They were personal, deeply personal.
In his own book, Zhu Danxi lays out this absolutely gut-wrenching personal tragedy. He says his father, his uncle, his brother, and his wife all died from what he calls medical errors, very likely from these same hot, drying treatments that were so popular. I mean, can you imagine? Losing that many family members to the very system you're a part of? That changes a person. It gave him a mission. So Zhu Danxi needed a way to fight back. He needed a new story, a new framework. And he found it in that old, neglected idea of yin deficiency. He decided to pick it up, dust it off, and completely reinvent it from the ground up. First thing he did, he tossed out that whole inside versus outside idea. Gone. For him, yin wasn't a place anymore. It was stuff. It was the body's most precious, life-giving substances, like blood and essence. A yin deficiency wasn't a problem happening inside somewhere. It was a full-blown crisis where the body's core resources were being burned away. And he summed it all up with this incredible punchy line, yang is always in excess, and yin is always deficient. Now, this wasn't just a clever saying. It was a direct shot at the entire medical establishment. He was basically arguing that our bodies are naturally predisposed to burn too hot, to use up our precious cooling resources way too fast. So here's how his new logic worked, step by step. 1. The real problem, he said, was that all these popular hot medicines were just scorching the earth, depleting the body's yin. 2. This depletion, this was the real root cause of so many diseases. And 3. The solution was obvious. Stop adding heat and start using cooling, nourishing remedies to build back those essential fluids.
He basically founded a whole new movement called the Yin Nourishing School.
So, the big question is, did it stick? Did anyone listen? Well, to see just how massive his impact was, let's go back and look at that one common symptom we mentioned at the very beginning.
Remember those night sweats? Well, before Zhu Danxi, the way doctors explained them was, and you're not going to believe this, the complete and total opposite of how we see it today.
Check out this timeline. It's wild. For hundreds of years, going back to the 800s, night sweats were blamed on yang deficiency. Basically, not having enough warm, protective energy on your body's surface. Then, after some debate and confusion, boom, Zhu Danxi's theory hits the scene. And by the 1400s, the whole thing is turned on its head. Night sweats become the absolute textbook sign of yin deficiency. Not enough cooling fluid inside to anchor the body's heat.
This is so important. He didn't just invent a new pill or a new treatment, he rewrote the entire narrative. The reason people were getting sick, the story they told about their own bodies, changed completely. Okay, so to be fair, his first draft wasn't perfect. Even historians say his early ideas were a little rough around the edges. But that doesn't matter. He planted the seed. He started the conversation. And over the next few hundred years, other brilliant physicians built on his work, refining it, until it became the sophisticated model of yin deficiency we know and use all over the world today. And that just makes you wonder, right? We tend to think of medical knowledge as this solid, unchanging thing. But this story shows us that sometimes a fundamental truth is actually just the story that won. The brilliant, hard-won, and deeply personal solution that one person came up with because they had to. How many other truths that we accept without question were once someone else's radical rebellion?